What is up, gamers? Enforcer 5150 here, and we are back to benchmark the HP Omen 15 144Hz gaming monitor with the i7 9750H and RTX 2070. So let's get right to it. So it's worth to note that you get very high settings when you do the auto detect for this game. We are going to go ahead and switch this up to ultra settings and see what kind of gameplay we get out of that. Obviously we get more frames when we bring it down, but I want to check out the ray tracing and the DLSS in this video. So let's go ahead and get the first one. We're going to have no ray tracing on, and we're just going to go ahead and do it default. So on the first one here, we're going to do the whole benchmark, but I'm just going to do snippets of the other ones and try to just do the most intense part, which is when the explosions come up, just to keep the video a little bit shorter. But if we look now, we're getting around 45 frames per second, and this is, like I said, without any ray tracing. It's just doing the regular rasterization. And I mean, it looks great. I mean, it doesn't look bad at all. The frames per second, obviously we would want to see higher, seeing that this laptop also has a 144Hz monitor. So getting over 60 is something that you want to be able to get. You could play it around here. Anything over 40 frames per second isn't too bad, but it's not going to be smooth as butter, that's for sure. I had the comment in the last video on playing under at 30 frames per second, and it is playable, yeah, but is it enjoyable as you would get on 60? No, not even close. But games like this, that's third person, I don't mind it too bad. Anyway, so I mean, we are definitely kicking up the GPU. It's been jumping from 90% to around 90%. So I mean, it has a lot of load onto it, but the CPU definitely is taking it all in. It's at 55%, so that's not bad. Let's take a look at these results. We have a max FPS of 108, average of 42, a low 1% low of 18. That's not too bad. It is playable in a way. So what we want to find out here is how much DLSS is actually going to save the FPS on here. So we're going to go ahead and put it on the first one here, which is performance, and see what we actually get. See if it gives us a little bit more than the 42 frames per second that we were seeing on average. So as you can see, it definitely saves it. I mean, things are a little bit softer, the image is a little bit more blurry or fuzzy, but I mean, the rasterize in here isn't too bad. When you look at that horse, it's just regular shiny, rasterized shiny, but we get, around 60 frames per second. It's not that bad. It's definitely a playable experience if you're not worried about, bringing down the quality a little bit like this. But it's not too bad. It's pretty close. Anyway, so we have a max of 104 and an average of 60 frames per second and a 1% low of 27. So that is actually pretty good. I would play at this, just regularly. And now we're going to go ahead and kick it up another notch to quality. Now this one is going to put quite the load on the CPU and everything. So let's go ahead and just have the DLSS at quality and the ray tracing off with ultra settings. All right, so we can see that we are getting decent frames per second. We're over 50, I'd say. Getting around the 60 frames per second is not too bad. This is just rasterized. There's no ray tracing, and the DLSS is on quality. So I mean, this looks very much like it did before, so I don't see that much of a bump, because you're getting from the 42 frames per second we've seen without the DLSS on, so we're only getting a few frames per second more. But let's go ahead and take a look at the results here. So looking at these, I mean, 10 frames per second difference, so we are getting a little bit more, and that's good, but it's not a huge jump because we're using the quality, but you do get more frames per second. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the next. So balanced was the one that I liked the most with the i9 10900K, but on this one, I don't know, we don't get as much as we wanted to see. Mainly, as you can see here, we're getting around the same frames per second. Now the quality of everything, I mean, it's a balanced quality, so it's not high, you know, as far as like, you know, all the textures and stuff like that, but it kind of reminds me the same that we were getting under performance. It's supposed to be kind of a mix between, you know, like the performance and, you know, max performance and your quality settings. But, you know, we're getting, you know, a good 56 frames per second. It's around 15 more than having DLSS off. So we do get a bump in the FPS. Moving on to ultra performance, and in the 10900K video I did mention this looks like complete garbage, and it is still complete garbage. I mean, yeah, it's playable. We're getting good frames per second here, 70s, you know, jumps down into this area where it jumps down to the 60s, and we stay over 60 frames per second. But if you look closely at, you know, the textures and everything, it's really fuzzy. I mean, this is if you have a lower end PC, this is what you're going to want to use with your graphics card. Like if you have a slower CPU, this is where you want to use it. But in something like this, I don't see a reason to use it. But we have a max frames per second of 101 and an average of 63 and a 1% low of 46. So really good FPS. Really it just does not look that appealing. So if you want those extra frames per second, definitely turn on the ultra performance. Now it is time to really hurt this laptop, and we're going to turn DLSS off. We turn ray tracing onto ultra, and as you can see that we are over the VRAM usage. So let's see what we get. Running with these settings, you'll instantly realize that you've made some really bad choices in life. In your gaming life, I mean, anyway. You jump down to 26 frames per second, and as soon as we start going into some of the major stuff here, it really starts, you know, getting hurt. 20 frames per second, definitely not playable. 15 frames per second with the explosions. 14, yeah, that's a bad idea, and I should probably get demonetized just for showing you that much of the clip, because it's just really damaging. Anyway, we're at a max frames per second of 70 frames per second, an average of 24, a minimum of 9, a 1% low of 12. Definitely not playable. Let's go ahead and see if DLSS can save this. So we'll go ahead and put it right on performance mode, and we'll see we definitely get a way better experience. 42 frames per second, and it's not too bad as far as how it looks. I mean, you get some of them ray traces in there. You'll see, you know, some of the reflections in the horse here. You can like see that it's like a real reflection on the ground of it, the metal there. Once those explosions come in, it does drop down into the 30s. But I mean, it's still in a way playable. If you have a lot of explosions and stuff like that, it's going to be annoying. So we'll have to go ahead and try to kick this up to make sure that we get some kind of you know, decent frame rate. But let's just take a look at these results. We got a max of 77 frames per second, an average of 42, a minimum of 14 we don't pay attention to, but we have a 1% low of 20 frames per second, which is just a bit too low for me. So we're going to set the DLSS to quality. Now this will be interesting because you remember when we had the DLSS off, we got around this just nothing. We got terrible frames per second, and we actually do get a good jump in frames. We're saying about 30% more, obviously almost double here. When the explosions come up, you get 32 frames per second. We were getting 15 with DLSS off completely. So I mean, the quality looks good in that, but we are getting some lower frames per second. But that, just remember, we were getting 15 frames per second during those explosions in the last test. So yeah, we have a max of 76, an average of 37, and a 1% low of 18. So it does go pretty low, but it is way better than running without DLSS on. So we're going to go ahead and switch this to ultra performance. And like I said, it looks kind of like garbage and I stick to that. But when we are running with everything maxed out and, you know, with ray tracing on, this isn't that bad. As far as the fuzziness, that part I don't like the textures and all that. But we're getting, 50s, 50 frames per second plus. And, we jumped down to around 40 into the explosions. But if you look in the background there, that's what drives me nuts. It's very distorted and it doesn't look that good. You may as well turn down your graphics settings instead of using that and then getting more frames per second by using the lower settings. So here we go. We have a max of 78 frames per second, an average of 50, a minimum of 20, and a 1% low of 33. So that's not that bad. It's definitely playable. But like I was saying, you may as well turn down the settings a little bit instead. Anyway, by now I hope you have enough information to kind of see what we can go with this laptop. We will be doing the GTX 1060 here pretty soon, which is my other laptop. Which is the same HP Omen, just with the 1060 in it. Anyway, these ones are, some of the different settings I tried with medium RTX performance and the medium RTX with balanced. Some of them were actually pretty good. So, it wasn't that bad. Like I said, it's definitely playable and definitely enjoyable to play on a laptop. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for watching this video. Make sure you hit that like button. Definitely subscribe if you're new to the channel. You all take care. And happy gaming.